All right. Hello, my friends. It looks like we are live, and we're talking about one of my favorite things today, and that is how to boost your major gift confidence. All right. So, if you're interested in boosting your major gift confidence, you're in the right place. The good news is that all of the tips I have to share with you today are great for boosting overall confidence, even when it comes to the rest of your fundraising. So, before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. If we haven't met yet, my name is Emma, and I help fundraisers and nonprofit leaders just like you raise more 5, 6, and even 7-figure gifts for their missions so you can have the impact that you dream of. So, before we dive in, I wanted to share a little bit of a story with you. So, this week we had a bit of a milestone in my house, and we were celebrating. We were celebrating my niece getting her learner's permit. So it got me thinking and remembering back to when I first learned to drive. Now, I don't know if you remember when you first learned to drive, but there was so much to think about, right? Go back to that beginner's mind, just sitting behind the wheel of the car, and you have to think about adjusting your mirrors, adjusting your controls. You have to think about your positioning on the road, where the other cars are, right? So much to think about and so much to get used to, which is now to some degree second nature for most of us who are drivers, right? So it also got me thinking about this analogy that sometimes for many folks, starting to work on major gifts can feel a little bit like getting behind the wheel of a big rig when you've traditionally driven a compact car your whole life, right? Can feel a little bit out of your depth, can feel a little bit uncomfortable. And this is where taking action to build confidence is so, so important. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dive into my first recommendation to you. But before I do, I want to hear from you. I would love to know, where are you joining us from? Go ahead and drop that below. I'd love to see where you're joining us from. And if you're catching up on the replay, I want to say welcome to you as well. Go ahead and use that hashtag replay. So let me know where you're joining from. I would love to hear from you. And if you're not able to see or hear me okay, let me know as well. I can make some adjustments here. Okay, so with that, I am going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to dive into my tip number one for you, and that is to make sure you commit to taking consistent action. All right, this has been one of my biggest learnings in my career and working with my coaching and my consulting clients. And here's the reality: there is no shortcut to growing your confidence, right? There is no shortcut to confidence building. It is only through taking consistent action that your confidence can grow. I know we'd all love to take a magic pill and have the confidence that we want. That is not the way it works. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about experience I had when the pandemic first hit. And that is when gyms closed, when all my fitness classes went away for some number of months. I decided, I can't manage without exercise. So I'm going to take up running, right? I'm going to take up running. I had never run a step before in my life. I was stuck at home. I was feeling frustrated. I wanted to give this a try. And truly, I started off by running 1 minute and maybe walking 4 minutes. Then the next week, I might work up to running 2 minutes and walking 3 minutes. It took me almost 5 months of cumulative, consistent action to working up to running 5K nonstop. And in many ways, this is like your confidence building, right? This is like your confidence building. You need to take consistent action. You need to commit to taking consistent action in order to grow your confidence. All right. So I want to know from you, what are you thinking about? You need to think about, what do you want to do once a week? What do you want to do twice a week, or even 3 times a week? You want to make that commitment to yourself to take consistent action. I'll be talking about a few ideas for you of things that you can commit to grow your confidence around major gift fundraising. All right, I'm going to pause and take a sip of my water. And I also want to invite you, if you're just joining us, let us know where you're joining from. And also, if you have any questions while I'm chatting, I would love to hear from you. The thing I love about video is this can be a conversation, a back and forth conversation. So feel free to dive in. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if you have any questions. Part 2 of what I wanted to talk about today, and it's really the second piece to my first tip to you, which is committing to taking consistent action. The second part of this is really around practicing doing the things that you're unsure about. Now this can be where things get a little uncomfortable. Hey, Jill, so good to see you here. To truly build confidence, those consistent actions you're committing to, they really do need to include practicing things that you're unsure about. Many people skip this part because it is uncomfortable, right? Who voluntarily wants to make themselves uncomfortable? But discomfort is, unfortunately, a key part of achieving growth. It's a key part of building confidence, right? It's a really important part of that growth process. But sometimes what our brains do is they interpret being uncomfortable as a threat, right? As being something to shy away from. So we really need to be purposeful about practicing things that put us outside of our comfort zone. Here's an example for you. This comes up very commonly when I'm working with students and coaching clients, and that is the idea of picking up the 500-pound phone. I love that term, right? A lot of us are really not super comfortable with phone conversations. I feel this is actually increasing as new generations join the fundraising profession. But being able to connect with your donors and have a meaningful conversation on the phone is a really important part of your major gift success. So that's an example you might like to take away. I'm going to commit to taking consistent action to build my confidence. I'm actually going to practice something I feel a little bit unsure about. Maybe that is picking up the phone. Maybe you're scheduling it in a certain number of times a week, or even just once a week, that you're taking consistent action on doing something that challenges you and pushes you outside of your comfort zone. All right. So tip number 3 I have for you in terms of building your confidence is an idea that I came across when I was rereading James Clear's great book called Atomic Habits. You've probably heard of it or come across it or read it yourself. I was recently rereading this, and he talks about the importance of creating identity-based habits. Okay. So he says basically the key to building lasting habits is really around, at the deepest level, creating a new identity first. So your current behaviors that you're engaging in, he says, essentially are basically just a reflection of or an expression of your current identity. And I found this so interesting because I thought this applies so much to the idea of building confidence. And in fact, if we want to break it down even further, I think that building confidence is actually a habit unto itself. Isn't that interesting? So it's a habit that you can get into. All the practices that you can engage in to build confidence, they are a collection of habits, right? So let me talk a little bit more about this idea of stepping into an identity and how that can help build your confidence. So he basically says there's 2 steps to this. One is decide what type of person you want to be. And number 2 is prove it to yourself with small wins. So going back to my becoming a runner, my committing to taking consistent action, and really actually pushing myself way out of my comfort zone by practicing running, let me tell you, it was awkward. I was running somewhere where there were a lot of experienced runners. I was always the slowest one. It was really pushing me outside of my comfort zone. I felt uncomfortable, sometimes a little bit embarrassed even. But I realized a big part of that journey for me in becoming a runner was actually stepping into that identity, right? I just decided I am running and I am a runner. And I practiced that identity. And it was a really important part of building my confidence and really establishing and maintaining those habits that contributed to confidence. So how does this apply to fundraising? I want you to try this on for yourself. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can practice it right now. In fact, I'm going to ask you to push yourself out of your comfort zone and maybe drop below what you're thinking when I say this. So here is a useful phrase to help you get started. I am the type of person who, you can fill in the blank from there. So here's an example, going back to this idea of picking up the 500-pound phone. I am the type of person who picks up the phone every day to have more meaningful conversations with my donors. So I want you to try this on. Who is ready to push themselves a bit out of their comfort zone? Go ahead and type below, I am the type of person who, and then follow that up with, what is it that you want to achieve? What new identity do you want to step into in order to boost your confidence around major gifts? This could be simple, and you can even use phrases like I am, right? I came up with a couple of examples. I am a leader who lands big gifts, right? Who wants to be a leader who lands big gifts? Who wants to step into that identity? There's one idea for you. It could even simply be, if you're a fundraiser and you haven't raised a lot of major gifts yet, I am a major gift fundraiser. So there's a couple simple ideas for you. I want you to either, if you're feeling shy, you can go ahead and write that out for yourself. But if you do want to practice something that you're not used to, it makes you a little uncomfortable, go ahead and type that below. Nadia loves, I am a leader who lands big gifts. I like that one too. Simple, 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 right? I am a leader who is persistent and lands big gifts. I love the addition in there of persistence. That's a really good identity to step into as well. So give this a try. And this is a really cool practice because this actually can spread into other areas of your life in terms of this practice and building habits and building confidence as well. But I love that tip, this idea of actually deciding on and creating this new identity and practicing it, right? And practicing it. And that can really help support building that confidence. All right, I love this. I love this. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I'm going to take a quick sip of my water. Wanted to talk a little bit about being honest with yourself about what you know and what you still need to learn. So this is a two-part, right? Oftentimes we aren't confident because, or, we decide we don't feel confident because I don't know enough and there's still so much to learn, right? So this is part A. We want to make sure that we're acknowledging ourselves for what we do know. We're acknowledging ourselves for those wins, no matter how small, that we're achieving when we're committing to that consistent action. So that's sort of part one of it. Part two is an interesting note that may be of interest to those of us who are more seasoned fundraisers and nonprofit leaders, right? And that is that those of us who are truly confident fundraisers, we recognize the importance of being lifelong learners, right? So this means a few things, that we're able to self-reflect, we're able to get feedback from others, solicit feedback from others, and understand what are the areas of development, right? What may be our blind spots? What might we still need to learn, no matter how long we've been doing this, no matter how long we've been fundraising, no matter how long we've been in leadership roles, right? Part of this on both sides, whether you do need to start acknowledging more, all that you already do know, or if you're a little more seasoned and you need to be a bit more mindful about having that beginner's mind and being a lifelong learner. Regardless, a big part of this is actually asking for help when you need it. And this can actually be the biggest struggle for those of us who are more seasoned or are in leadership roles. It can be very hard to put ourselves in that vulnerable situation of asking for help when we need it. But it's such an important part of building confidence, right? And it's a little counterintuitive, isn't it? So I want to make sure that we're not necessarily falling into that trap for those of us who are more seasoned of believing that we've learned everything there is to know. This can be very easy to do once you've developed a certain level of expertise. So I really encourage you to think about this, right? And think about this notion of confidence. You want to make sure that you're not tipping into the zone of overconfidence, because this can happen sometimes to us too. Once we've had a certain amount of success, once we've established a really strong base of learning, it can be easy for us to stagnate and not continue to be growing and learning. So really important for all of us, I think, to put ourselves in that vulnerable space, right, of continuing to step into those situations that make us a little bit uncomfortable so that we can continue to grow and build that confidence. All right, Jill has a great question. In the current state of the world, it is so difficult to remain confident. Yes, it absolutely is. And I think I want you to think about it this way, right? Is like, I think I hadn't planned to talk about self compassion today, but I think self compassion is a really crucial part of confidence building when I reflect on that a little bit. So I think actually being, again, vulnerable enough to acknowledge like things are tough right now. I'm struggling. There's a lot going on in the world that I'm struggling with. We're in year 2 of a pandemic. A lot of us are tired. A lot of us, I'll speak only for myself, but not seeing a lot of people in person, given the area I'm in, given that we've been in lockdown quite a bit, it's felt very isolating, right? It's felt very isolating and very lonely. And that can sometimes impact our sense of confidence. So it's really important, if our confidence is feeling a little shaken, to have compassion for ourselves. This is one of the strongest things that you can do. Often this idea is perceived as weak, but it actually takes a great deal of strength and commitment to have compassion for ourselves, to recognize, oh, I am feeling less than confident now. To use my personal example, I am feeling isolated and lonely. And part of self-confidence in working through that is to also recognize that all humans are having this experience. If not right now, at some point in their lives, that all humans share this experience, right? The sense of isolation, loneliness, of maybe having your confidence shaken. And I find that hugely powerful to think of, right? When we're thinking of no matter who you are, right? No matter where you are in the world, you have experienced this sense of, like having your confidence shaken, of isolation, or, whatever the tough emotion is you're grappling with now. So I really would recommend that you practice a little bit of self-compassion, for those of us who do feel like our confidence is a bit shaken. And I think I'll be honest with you, I'm more worried about folks who have tipped over into the overconfident zone. If at this point in the world you never feel, shaken, or you never feel tired or vulnerable or whatever, fill in the blank with whatever emotion you might be experiencing right now. It could be a sign you've actually tipped into a place of overconfidence, or, toxic positivity, for example, that maybe you're papering over things that you need to be considering. So sorry, there's a little side line there on something I think is really important for us in order to succeed and build our confidence, this idea of practicing self-compassion and just recognizing like, hey, I feel a bit shaken right now, and that's okay. And you know what? I share this feeling with all humans in the world have this experience. I find that is super, super helpful. Okay, Nadia is sharing a great resource. Interesting book I'm reading, Confidence, Overcoming Low Self-Esteem, Insecurity, and Self-Doubt. I love this. This sounds great. The counterintuitive theme in this book is the message that it's okay to not be so confident. I love this precisely because it makes you human and humble and curious, right? There's such a prevalence in our culture to appear confident. And the author argues it's also more important to focus on than being competent. This is very interesting. So if anyone's interested in that, sounds like a great resource. Thanks for sharing, Nadia. And it is absolutely a counterintuitive theme, is that true confidence does not mean always getting it perfect. True confidence does not mean never making a mistake, right? Because I think what's showing up there is, right, that can be sort of false confidence in many ways, right? It can actually be a sign that we're not stepping into that discomfort zone, that we're not practicing things that we're good at. It can be very easy for us to do this as a human, right? I'm thinking back to my early running days, getting out the door and having every runner on, the route I took blast past me while I was kind of struggling along and feeling embarrassed, right? Like, not a comfortable experience. It would have been much easier, to stay home, much easier to stay home and not feel embarrassed and not suffer from, comparison-itis with all the other folks out there who had more experience than I did. But right, if it would have resulted in a sense of false confidence, right, or no confidence at all. And I had to actually go through that experience to build up my confidence as a runner, which still gets shaken all the time, right? But I go back to that identity I've developed. It's like, hey, doesn't matter how fast I'm going, I am running and I am a runner. Oh, sorry, Jill's referring to costs, inflation, stock market. people keeping their money close to their chest, right? I think, you know what, Jill, I want to encourage you to be thinking about this, is that none of this situation is not absolute. So this can be a bit of a belief piece as well, right? This can be a bit of a belief piece as well, to make sure that we're not over catastrophizing what's happening out there in terms of the economy right now. I speak as someone who had fundraised through the Great Recession. And there were two pieces to that. I think it was really important to be aware what was happening, understand what was happening, but not to give into that tendency that we have as humans to catastrophize, right? So, you know, in my experience in fundraising through the Great Recession, what we saw was there were actually donors out there who were really stepping up to the plate and actually increasing their generosity. It is absolutely not a foregone conclusion that your fundraising is going to be hurt if you're executing on the right strategies. Your fundraising is not necessarily going to be hurt by the changes that are happening in the world right now in terms of inflation, stock market, etc. In fact, what we saw in fundraising through the Great Recession is that typically major donors, especially individual donors, individual major donors, tended to lead the way in terms of their generosity and their giving during the recession, as well as during the recovery from that. So really important here, and actually a really crucial piece of confidence building, is not to give into a sort of catastrophic belief that our fundraising is going to tank because the economy has taken a downturn. Very natural place for us to go as humans. I talk about this a lot, you know, in my trainings, this idea of negativity bias and how it actually impacts us and impacts our beliefs and our decision-making as fundraisers and leaders. Negativity bias simply refers to the fact that our brains are wired to spot the dangers and risks in the world. And they are going to hone into on that, right? And you could have 10 positive experiences, 10 positive signs. Your brain's still going to lock in on the one negative one. Rick Hansen teaches a lot about negativity bias, and he has a really great expression I love, and that is, the brain is like Teflon, so it's like a non-stick surface when it comes to positive experiences, and it's like Velcro with negative experiences. So even just knowing and being aware that, you know, when negative things are going on in the world, that our attention's really going to hone in on that. And it's going to be very difficult for us to take in positive things that are occurring. That can be really useful. And again, I always like to, when I'm talking about negativity bias, I always like to be clear. This is not about toxic positivity or papering over or ignoring problems that are going on in the world. But it is really about just recognizing our brains are going to be focused there very, very strongly, and that we need to really be conscious about that and recognize that we need to be also attending to the positive. We saw this happen very strongly at the beginning of the pandemic. I myself was even working with folks who actually like pulled the plug on their fundraising against my advice, because essentially a lot of organizations did not recover from this, said, now is not the time to fundraise. It's inappropriate to be fundraising right now. And we're actually going to either press pause or pull the plug on our fundraising because of the pandemic. Crystal ball, here we are 2 years later, right? But this I always talk about is really as a result of that negativity bias, I think, and being conscious of that, and making sure that we're monitoring this and not giving into it. Because, you know, organizations had to shut their door due to negativity bias, right? Because decisions were made about pulling the plug or about suspending fundraising, right? Because it was inappropriate at that time, because, you know, there was a pandemic, people weren't going to give, all of those kind of negative perceptions that actually did not play out and turn out to be true over the course of the pandemic. What we did see was that unprecedented generosity from donors across sectors, right? Certain areas were definitely impacted, in-person events, obviously. But when we're thinking about philanthropic giving, across sectors, we saw an uptick in generosity. And as long as folks were continuing to maintain their fundraising and engage their donors, most organizations experienced a positive outcome. Hopefully that's helpful. I've gone off on a couple of different journeys today, including negativity bias and self-compassion. I think those are two really important keys as well. And self-compassion can, while it sounds soft, is actually very strong, a very strong skill to have. Because you know what, it even comes into play when we're thinking about something like cost, inflation, stock market, right? It comes into play because and our money mindset, right? Comes into play because if we can have self-compassion for ourselves when we are starting to feel panicky, we're starting to feel anxious and fearful about what the future holds in terms of the economy, self-compassion. Hey, you know what? This is hard. This is really difficult to feel, but I know there are also a lot of folks out there sharing sharing this feeling with me, that are feeling shaken in their confidence about the economy, that are worried about money, and they're worried about achieving their future goals, right? But it's very important we don't give into that negativity bias and stop in our tracks and stop doing all the things that we need to do to build those habits and develop that confidence, including, to recap, taking consistent action, making a commitment to that, being really purposeful about practicing things that may be a bit outside of your comfort zone, being honest with yourself about what you know and what you still need to learn, and stepping into the identity you want to step into. So if you take one thing away from this, I'd love for your homework to be, take this away. And if you haven't already, think about, what is the end of the sentence? I am the type of person who, and fill that in for yourself and start practicing that identity and start gathering those small wins to begin to boost that confidence. So I hope this has been a helpful conversation for you. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. I'm going to take a quick sip of my water. If you have any more questions, go ahead and drop them below. And I wanted to share a great free resource for you if anyone wants ideas on how to grow their major gift fundraising, on things they might like to commit to consistently practicing, and you haven't downloaded yet my blueprint for major gift success. I want to make sure you get your hands on this. So you can find this at my website. It's at blueskyphilanthropy.com/blueprint. And it is going to give you a clear plan to get started on raising more 5- and 6-figure gifts for your mission. So if you're looking for some ideas on some of those things to practice that might push you a little bit out of your comfort zone, go ahead and download that now. All right, my friends, with that, I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank you for joining me today. I know this can be a tough topic to talk about because, again, not all of us like to admit or feel vulnerable around, needing to build confidence. But confidence building is important for all of us, no matter whether we're new to fundraising, just starting out, or whether we're a seasoned fundraising professional. Really important for us. Thank you for joining us, Susan. Oh, Susan has a question. The phone is ringing. The potential donor picks up. What is your first sentence after this? Well, Susan, you know what? I'm going to have a coaching moment. And I'm going to say, I don't think you need my first sentence after this. I want you to take this away and reflect on this for yourself, because every person might look a little bit different, right? Every person, it might look a little bit different. What my first sentence is doesn't matter as much as what your first sentence is, Susan. It's something that you should be really comfortable with. So take it away. And again, or something, let's say, that you grow comfortable with, because maybe it doesn't feel super comfortable at the beginning. At the very least, a first sentence is really about identifying yourself and why you're calling. But because it could be a variety of different reasons, I can't really come up with that for you. But, I would say, if I'm making a thank you call, I'd make it really short and sweet. It's Emma calling from XYZ organization. And I wanted to give you a call today because, your donation just crossed my desk, and I want to pick up the phone right now and say thank you. there's one example, but make it natural. You don't necessarily have to borrow other people's sentences whole hog, but definitely thinking about that for you, what feels good for you, what's going to make you most likely to pick up that phone and call a donor. And through practicing it, that's actually how you can refine it and build your confidence around it. So you might notice a few things after making a few calls is, oh, like sometimes like when they hear X or Y, they think I'm going to be asking for another gift right away. So, they hang up on me. So I'm going to front load this piece first. So practice it and, you'll learn along the way, but there is no, and here's the really interesting thing, right? There is no exact precise way. Sometimes what we want the exact sentence that's going to make sure that nobody ever hangs up on us. And that does not exist. So part of building confidence is actually also to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to get out there and I'm going to get some wins. And, 3 donors out of 5 are going to want to talk to me. And maybe one's going to hang up on me. And you know what? That's okay. I'm going to have self-compassion for myself when I feel a little awkward that happened. But I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep taking consistent action, right? So, building that resilience and continuing to take action and build that confidence is important. So hopefully that's helpful, Susan. But a few examples for you there, a few things to think about, and just knowing that there's no magic sentence or magic word that's necessarily going to protect you. Part of building confidence is also probably getting a little comfortable with sometimes getting hung up on. That's part of the deal. We want to minimize that, right? So we want to experiment with how we introduce ourselves to see if there is a way to, cut down on that kind of thing. But recognizing that, someone hanging up on you doesn't reflect in any way on you, right? You don't want to make it mean something terrible like I'm a bad fundraiser, right? I didn't do that right? So I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle as well, is making sure that you're believing and recognizing like donor hanging up on me actually doesn't mean anything about me. Okay, so with that, I'm going to wrap up. I hope you find that helpful, Susan. I hope everyone else has found this conversation helpful. I want to encourage you, get out there, commit to taking consistent action, commit to pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, practicing those things that are newer to you or a little more uncomfortable for you. Step into that identity. I am a leader who lands big gifts, and get out there and boost that confidence. I'd love to hear from you. If you do have a success or win, I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and reach out. Let me know. I'd love to celebrate that with you. All right, my friends, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, and we will see you soon. Hopefully we'll see you next time on one of my regular live videos all about fundraising and major gifts. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.